Anyway, Jahmyr Gibbs, let's talk about him because he just had his first, I would consider a breakout game. Any chance the Lions actually ever give him superstar work?
Depends what you mean by that.
Is he going to score 20 points a game?
I think it's very possible that happens at some point. I think probably not next year. I think that's probably something you'd hope for maybe by year 3. I mean, next year David Montgomery is clearly going to be on the team. And I just think that as long as David Montgomery is on the team and serviceable, he's going to have a role. So the nice thing with the Lions is their running back usage is really heavy. So they can have several games where there's 28 to 30 running back points available, and you just have to get 60% of them to post an RB1 week. I also think what's the most interesting part for me with Gibbs is not even really is he going to get all these goal line carries and get all these inside runs? I just don't think that that's super likely early in his career. We didn't see guys like Kamara or McCaffrey or Eckler get that type of workload until, I think year 2 for McCaffrey, but for some of those other guys, even into year 4, year 5. I think what's most interesting to me is are they actually going to use this guy as a receiver in the way that we would want? And then B, what's the contingent upside? Is it just Monty standing in his way, or is it just Gibbs standing in his way? And I thought this week was really, really encouraging. Monty's out, and Gibbs got 87% of the snaps. So it was okay, if that's the deal, if the deal is we get, all the receiving work, and we have to lose the goal line work with Monty, but we also get to buy this contingent upside where he gets to just be this superstar RB1 overall contender anytime Monty's out. That's pretty interesting to me. And then the other aspect that was fun, even in the first half, I thought he was getting really dynamic route deployment where they were lining him outside. They were running him on choice routes. They were running him on these rail routes. And I was texting my buddy halftime. I was man, it's too bad that the Dolphins are getting blown out of the stadium, because I think Gibbs would have had a really good game if they could have ran more than 15 plays before they were down 35 points. And, God bless the Lions in the second half for doing a solid for all the fantasy managers out there and playing their stars all the way till the bitter end of a game that they were losing by 32. And it kept up in the second half. It was not, if you watch all the Gibbs stuff, it was not just purely checkdowns. A lot of the fourth quarter stuff was, but he had a really cool design screen pass where they did a fake reverse, came back to him with a convoy out front. They had him run several choice routes, which is he's running through the line, isolating against the linebacker, reading the leverage, breaking one way or the other way. He hit on a rail route, which is a wheel route, going down the sideline against mesh. It was pretty much everything you want to see out of a really dynamic receiving running back, how he was getting used. It was encouraging that they looked at it and said, look, we're not just going to force this square peg into this round hole this week. We're going to build a game plan for our backfield that involves Gibbs' strengths. It was a long way away from, frankly, what they did in the Falcons game, where I thought they did just kind of force Gibbs to play the David Montgomery role. So this was super encouraging to see out of a bye week. I hope that we get another week where he gets to do this, hopefully in a game where they're playing maybe from ahead against the Raiders, with hopefully, no, nothing against David Montgomery, but I'm kind of just hoping he misses another week. And,
if I'm being honest.
Really? You want Montgomery back?
I feel like I want more opportunity to buy Jahmyr Gibbs before we get to the trade deadline. And every week that David Montgomery plays, I feel like I have an extended buying period on Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he is he's got a 16.3% target share and he left one game early. 16.3% target share is absurd for a rookie running back. Really, really strong.
Yeah.
So I know it's cliche to be he's Alvin Kamara, but he's freaking Alvin Kamara. He's lighter than Alvin Kamara. I totally understand that he's not actually Alvin Kamara, but he's getting that type of receiving workload. And the coach happens to be the coach who coached Alvin Kamara, which is kind of one of those things where it's I don't know, is this a parallel or is this just how it worked out?
Right. And Alvin Kamara had a Mark Ingram for several of his great seasons, who was getting a lot of carries.
I've played Dynasty Fantasy Football for many years at this point, and I remember in 2017 at the end of the year being ooh, I don't know about Alvin Kamara. He only had a 37% snap share. year 2, I don't know about Alvin Kamara. He's only going to get 50% of the opportunities. I don't know about Alvin Kamara the next year. And then that was before I really understood about target share and targets being 1.5 times or whatever. No, it's 2.2 times.
3 times.
3 times? I didn't know that 10 years ago or however long that goes, 7 years ago.
Right.
And then you that's how you learn that kind of stuff, right? So it's
yeah.
Well, if Jahmyr Gibbs is already number 5 in the NFL, 16.3% target share, we're talking about a guy who's probably going to be in that 20% plus range, and that's easily going to make him a top 5 contender. He may not lead the world in fantasy points, but he's a top 5 contender with a 20% target share.
And I would argue
really exciting.
I would argue that not that much of this week's game would have been that different if David Montgomery was playing. He certainly would have seen less of the carries, right? He got 11 carries, maybe he sees 5 of them. Okay.
Yeah, and how many points does he score on those extra 6 carries?
Not a lot. Right. Okay, he got 1 carry inside the 10-yard line where he got stuffed. He wouldn't have seen that carry. Big whoop. He didn't score it anyway. Mm-hmm. Ceiling is obviously higher without David Montgomery because he has a chance to see goal line work. But his touchdown came on a 30-yard toss play. They were already usually getting him into the game to run those outside toss plays. That's probably would have been a Gibbs play regardless. A lot of the pass down work, a lot of the stuff that was designed for him is always the stuff that's going to go to Gibbs. They don't do those kinds of routes for David Montgomery. They occasionally throw in little checkdowns as an outlet if he doesn't need to be pass protecting. Some of those checkdowns maybe go to Monty, but we haven't really seen this team with both running backs active and negative script yet. A lot of the games when they've had both backs have been Monty favorable scripts where they've gotten way up on teams and they've just been able to run Monty into the line repeatedly. I do think we're going to see a game at some point in time this year where Monty is active and Gibbs is active, and the first half is the split that the split is, and then they're going to fall behind and they're going to throw, and it's going to be a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, running a lot of routes, right? We'll see. Maybe it's more Monty in for pass protection than I expect, but I do tend to think that a lot of the fun pass down stuff that we saw from Gibbs could still happen with Monty in the fold. And it's just going to be a game script dependent thing and a matchup dependent thing. And I don't necessarily know. I'm not saying it has to be they have to fall behind 32. I just mean how many times do we see these Saints games where you see these back and forth games and it's Ingram comes in and plays and then Kamara comes in and plays. But when Kamara's in there throwing to him. And I think that the more we see the Lions in fun back and forth game styles where they have to be throwing the ball and they have to be looking for explosive plays and they're not just running the clock out into the line repeatedly, I think we're going to see some big games alongside David Montgomery this season from Gibbs. I think he'll be a starter the rest of the season, regardless of Montgomery's injury status. And I held that opinion, honestly, prior to this week, but even more buttressed by how they used him. And I think maybe not next year, but I think at some point in time, we will see a 20-plus point per game Jahmyr Gibbs season.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think he's probably, for me, he's a fringy RB1 rest of season with David Montgomery healthy. And then that's 14, 15 points per game. And then we get to next season, and I'm he's probably going to be more involved next season, even with David Montgomery. We're probably talking top 6 upside. And then anytime that David Montgomery's out, RB1 overall is in play. And David Montgomery's probably going to miss some games at some point because most running backs do. And in those games, he's going to smash. And then we're going to end up with a 18-point season. And then in the event that they actually do ever give him the role, it's going to be 20 points. And it's going to be awesome. So he's a heavy buy for me, I think.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
And yeah. So I don't know. I looking at it. I probably have Jahmyr Gibbs in the Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne range of where I would have him ranked.
I think that's pretty fair. I have him a tick behind just because I do think you're getting a little bit more fragility with that role, but you're also getting the upside of the elite receiving profile and of the youth. So, maybe I should have him not the top of the tier below, but sort of the back of that tier. Maybe, I'm talking myself into that a little bit.
Well, it's just DeAndre Swift, right? He just played with the Lions. He had I think it was a 12 or 13% target share as a rookie. He jumped to a 20% target share in his second year. Jahmyr Gibbs is 4 or 5 percentage points already ahead of him in the first half of his rookie year. Like Jahmyr Gibbs could be a 20% target share player rest of season at this point, which would be insane because they have that other guy there. I can't remember his name. He's drafted in the first round last year. He's terrible. And that kind of paves the way. They're not going to be throwing him the ball. So Jahmyr Gibbs deep threat makes a lot of sense to me.
He did put up, I think, like 150 air yards this week, but he put up 0 real yards.
Yeah, so there's an element there that was missing. Yeah. He was doing the Donovan Peoples-Jones thing, except they were like throwing it to him and he just wouldn't catch it.
Yeah, it's tough.